Mate is right, nation. You've heard me say many times, when you lose your mind, you lose your life. Well, I've got a guest today who's going to help regain your mind and improve your mind. I've been waiting a very, very long time for this neuroscientist. She's an expert in neurobiology, an expert in neuroimaging. She's written one of the most amazing books called Biohack Your Brain, recommended for everyone with regards to their mind and the function of their mind. So welcome to the show, Dr. Kristen Willeumier.
Well, Dr. Steve, thank you for that lovely introduction. And truly, it is my great honor and pleasure to be here working with you and having this great conversation about all things biohacking, longevity, and optimal health and wellness. So you and I share a similar passion.
Yeah, wonderful. And what a book. And I think everybody needs to get this book, because we know one of the four horsemen is neurodegenerative conditions, and we've just seen it exponentially increasing. And so the first question off the cuff is, why did you write this incredible book called Biohack Your Brain, How to Boost Cognitive Health, Performance, and Power?
Well, first of all, thank you for picking it up. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to hear it made its way to South Africa. So the reason why I wrote the book is I had the great fortune of running a clinical neuroimaging department for one of the largest outpatient psychiatric centers in the United States, the Amen Clinics. They have 12 locations throughout the United States and see on average 4,000 to 6,000 patients per month. So we have thousands of patients that are coming into our clinic. And as somebody who ran the clinical neuroimaging department, we would do both electrical imaging of the brain and functional imaging of the brain using something called brain SPECT imaging, which is a nuclear imaging study that measures blood flow and activity patterns in the brain. And the kind of people that would come to our clinic are people that had complex psychiatric disorders. So they had classically failed 3 previous treatment providers and were looking for ways to address their mental health issues, right? Anxiety, depression, ADHD, bipolar disorder, OCD, right? There, many psychiatric disorders that people would come and see us to treat. And on average, our patients would have 5 to 6 psychiatric diagnoses. So it was a very complex population. And our goal was, how do we utilize neuroimaging to help with the targeted treatment of these psychiatric disorders and use the most sort of effective ways and the simplest ways to do it. So our philosophy is natural first. If we can use dietary and lifestyle modifications, that's where we're going to start. And then medications when necessary, because as you and I both know, medications have side effects. And when you're treating people with depression, those side effects can be, very risky. So here I am running these clinical research trials, and I started working with the Amen Clinics in 2009. And I write about this in the book. I had just come out of really more of a basic science training, working over at UCLA and Cedars-Sinai. I was studying neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease in mouse models. And here I am now working in a clinical setting with psychiatric patients and patients that have a variety of, brain disorders. And the very first study that Dr. Amen said we were going to do was looking at a population of NFL football players and asking the question, does playing football, American football, cause long-term brain damage? And in 2009, so I mean, when we're looking at sports, we know, if you look at the historical record of boxing, we know competing in contact and collision-based sports can have impacts on the brain. But now that we had these neuroimaging modalities, we wanted to look at this population of pro athletes and ask that simple question. So the initial study was supposed to have 30 players. And after we worked with the first 15, using cognitive assessments, neuropsychiatric assessments, electrical imaging, functional imaging, we became very aware that these players were really struggling, not just with mental health and cognitive issues, but the actual brain, the changes that we're seeing in the brain were quite significant when you compare them to a normative database. And So at that point, we decided to expand the study to 100 players, and then I had actually had a waiting list of 250. And you can only image so many players. It's actually very costly to do a study of that magnitude. But we also knew we had to do a brain rehabilitation component for these players. And so that study, the very first study I was doing at the Amen clinics, turned into, we continued this work with pro athletes, studying their brains and assessing brain function, throughout the time I was at the Amen clinics. But then the things that we learned from that work, we were applying to patients coming in with psychiatric disorders and mild cognitive impairment and dementia. So there was this unique rehabilitation component that we were doing with the brain, and we had the brain imaging to show that it was working. So that's a very long answer to tell you. I had not been aware that we would be able to use sort of very simple dietary and lifestyle modifications even within a 6-month window of time, and see measurable changes using brain imaging that were consistent over the course of years. So not only were we able to change the brain, but if we re-imaged players or our patients a year later, 2 years later, 4 years later, they were able to maintain those changes. And for me, it was extraordinary. I had never seen anything like this. And I know you as a doctor can really appreciate this. Having the objective evidence using the brain imaging that these changes could not only be made in the sort of the physical organic structure of the brain, but that they could be maintained over time, I felt was really important to share more with the general public, because most people don't know if they take omega-3 fatty acids, or they take certain supplements, or they make a meaningful change in their diet. How is that impacting their brain health, and how can we measure that? So that's why I wrote the book. I wrote it for the players. I wrote it for anybody who plays a collision-based sport, whether it's rugby, soccer, football. I wanted them to make sure they knew how to be proactive about taking care of their brain health, because as you know, I mean, we're seeing chronic traumatic encephalopathy in these players of various sports, and I don't want anybody to ever think there isn't something that they can do to slow down
Yeah.
the brain aging process.
Fantastic. And just want to absolutely honor you, because this book is amazing. And I don't think it's only for athletes and those that are going
Yeah,
through any trauma in the head area. I think it's for every single person, because at the end of the day, we've got this amazing organ, the brain. And generally, before, there was not really this data sort of centric model where we could have objective findings. There are more objective tests now that are being done. But I think it just adds sort of credibility to the area of this amazing body, that we can use data to help people, let them see, make the improvements, measure them, track their trends, and go forward. So well done to you. I'm going to ask quite a few questions, and I'm so
sure.
excited for the next, 50 minutes. But I want you to think of two avatars, if you can, Kristen. One is the corporate executive. We do a lot of corporate wellness programs. We
Yes.
use all the auditing, from bloods to genetics, heart rate variability to inflammatory
Perfect.
markers, your essential fatty acids, amino acid testing, heavy metal testing. We put this together, sometimes stool testing, urine testing, organic acid testing. And we do all this testing. And the avatar that we're seeing within the corporate sort of scene is someone who's struggling with their hormones, struggling with brain fog,
Right.
struggling with cognitive abilities, anxiety or depression, feeling really, inverted commas, burnt out. And many of the teams that we get
Right.
brought into, half the team has to take long leave, which is over 3 months, because unfortunately they're not coping cognitively. And so I do want you to answer the question with that one avatar. And then the other
Yes.
avatar is someone with early onset dementia or mild cognitive
Yes.
impairment or subjective cognitive impairment. So the first question that I think in that category of those two avatars that I think is really, really important, and I think applies to both, is in your book, you say the 3 most significant ways to change your brain. And for me, it was really a theoretical understanding that people need to understand these 3 major points of: you can grow new brain cells, the blood flow, and then the sympathetic nervous system or the autonomic nervous system. Can you unpack those three very important pillars of understanding, or these concepts that people need to grab hold on in terms of the way they approach brain and mind health?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up these different populations. So the CEO population, we would have the Young Presidents Organization come in and do their retreat and get what we would call sort of a full brain evaluation to see how they were functioning. What I love about that population of individuals is they are able to take the metrics that we track, just like what you're tracking, and make very impactful changes to help support their long-term brain health. And what you said, I think, is really fascinating, that you have some CEOs that have to take a 3-month break because of the kind of stress that they're under. So when coming to our clinic, the things that we would do, much like what you were doing, would include, the baseline neurocognitive assessments, both, a computerized one, but one that also tests for mild cognitive impairment and dementia. Because as you know, and most people don't know this, that dementia begins in the brain 1 to 2 decades before you have a symptom. So the changes are happening at the cellular level before you are symptomatic at 65, which means at 45, you should be thinking about your brain health. And I'm sure some of the CEOs you're working with might be in their 20s, so you see these really like extraordinary minds. So we want to get people thinking about their brain health. So you look at the cognitive assessments, you look at the neuropsychiatric inventories. You do, again, for us, because we use brain imaging, both the electrical imaging, which I like, that is a non-invasive way to very quickly get a snapshot of how your unique brain is functioning. And then you can use techniques like neurofeedback, very targeted neurofeedback, to work at any area of the brain, even the deeper regions, right? In the basal ganglia, the thalamus, and some of the regions that we might see overactive in a CEO population, right? Where they're going to have perhaps more anxiety, right? And they're sort of struggling with burnout. So they're very simple ways that we can help address that. But then also to look at that blood flow piece when we do the SPECT imaging and show people, listen, there are potential areas of your brain that are low in perfusion. And why is that important? If we don't change that, healthy blood flow is what, circulates oxygen to our cells and neurons of the brain. And if we don't change that over time, those are going to be the areas of the brain that start to shrink over time. And as most people don't know, once we hit the age of 40, our brain begins to shrink about 5% per decade. And then that accelerates by the time we hit the age of 70. So, you mentioned the blood flow piece, which is important. Whether you're just somebody wanting to be a healthy individual, you want to be a really sharp CEO, we have to make sure that you're having adequate perfusion throughout your brain. Again, number 2, we have to make sure that the activity patterns in your brain are what we like to call their most stable and efficient. So if I do an EEG on your brain and see increased activity in, again, the basal ganglia area, then I know you're probably a high anxiety person, and we might need to calm those brain regions down. Why? Because when we calm them down, it brings you to a place where you're most, again, we kind of say stability and efficiency. And the most efficient brain, right, is one where the sort of baseline activity patterns are optimized. So again, we talk in this world of biohacking, it's about sort of optimizing how your brain is wired. I know people who are CEOs that have bipolar disorder, which is actually a very active brain. There's sort of multiple areas of the brain that are excessively active. Now, they might be able to access sparks of genius, because I know a lot of people with bipolar disorders that are extraordinarily smart. But on the flip side, they may not be able to sleep for days on end. These are the people that might be having other health challenges. And so again, we look at your brain, we can help calm down these circuits or improve the blood flow to help support sort of your long-term health and longevity. So we talked about blood flow. We talked about managing your sympathetic nervous system. I mean, and there's so much we can talk
Sure.
to, with regards to that, meditation and yoga and using sound. I mean, we're in this new era of technology where we can use sound and light and um, again, meditation and meditation tapes. I mean, I know I heard you listen to Brain Tap, right?
Yeah.
We have ways that we can help shift the brain into this alpha state, which is the calm and relaxed state, which is where we want our CEOs to be, right? As if when they're in their alpha state, they're going to be at their most efficient cognitively. So, and what was the third one you had mentioned? We were talking about.
The third one that you mentioned, that just the mindset of you can grow new brain cells no matter
Oh,
what age you are.
yes, that one is extraordinary. I know you and I are probably contemporaries, about the same age. And this was something that we were finding about 20, 25 years ago, that there's a region of the brain called the hippocampus that can continue to grow new neurons throughout the lifespan. And as we say, why is that important? Because that's the area of the brain involved in learning and memory. So all of the wonderful information that we learn during the day that we store in our short-term memory, when we sleep, gets consolidated into our long-term memory by activity of the hippocampus. So as we age, that region of the brain does shrink. And we see it, we do MRIs, and we can see when the hippocampal volume shrinks, it's correlated with mild cognitive impairment leading to dementia. So the two things that you can do to help keep hippocampal volume strong as you age are exercise, daily exercise, and new learning. And you actually need both, which is why, again, it's probably why we have CEOs that can live really long lives, right? The CEOs that read a book a day, which I think is phenomenal. I challenge everyone who's listening to this podcast to get into the habit of reading a book a day and exercising daily, because the exercise increases brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is what helps, right, the growth of these neurons in the brain, and vascular endothelial growth factor, which also helps the growth of new blood vessels. And you need the two of those, right, to keep that region of the brain growing. And it also keeps blood flow, right, elevated throughout your brain. And then you need the new learning daily to keep those neurons there, because you might grow a bunch of new neurons, but they may not stay. So you need the two together, the exercise plus the daily learning, to help support the growth of these neurons. And so we've seen, again, in our clinical setting, just like you, we see people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I have literally seen people change their brain scans by improving blood flow and maintaining hippocampal volume as they age, so it doesn't shrink.
Brilliant. And that's wonderful. I'm going to summarize those listening, wherever you are. If you're struggling with your brain and your mental performance, your memory, you've got brain fog, understand these three concepts. One, you can grow new brain cells. It is possible no matter what age you are. Secondly, you need to get blood flow going in that brain, which is exercise. And we're going to talk about the 10 things that people can do in 10 minutes. Probably the most brilliant part of this book. I tell you, if I could photostat that and put it over the world and send it, I would do it, because it is just so practical and so important. And then the third thing related to your sympathetic nervous system and measuring your autonomic nervous system, which we spoke again and again about heart rate variability, how important it is, how accurate it is now with a lot of the devices that we're using. It's very precise. If it does make any errors, it'll make the same, and you can watch what happens to your heart rate variability. Many of my listeners know that when I go overseas, I saw my parents and my family in Cyprus for a month. My heart rate variability improved by 50% from my baseline.
Wow. Wow,
So,
because you were with your family?
and I was on
I
holiday, and there
love
was sea, and there
this.
was sun, and there was food, and I wasn't in a big city, and I wasn't at the practice and with my corporate programs. I was literally
Yes.
eating, sleeping, relaxing, exercising every single day, and in the ocean. So 50% improvement on my HRV, which was, it's quite amazing. Yeah.
Can I make a comment about
Sure.
that? First of all, that is extraordinary, and everybody should be measuring their heart rate variability. That having it in the optimized zone will improve what we call heart coherence. And because the heart and the brain are connected, when we also get our brain into a coherent state, which again, you can do with the brain tap, getting the brain waves into that alpha state, which is relaxed and focused. It's marrying the two, the heart rate variability with the brain. That is what is going to put you into your most efficient brain state. And when we are efficient, we think clearly, we get inspired with new ideas. I mean, it's like if you're a CEO or you're somebody trying to figure out your life and your purpose, the easiest way to do that is to marry the brain coherence and the heart coherence. And so you really make a compelling argument to remind people to take that time out to connect with their families and measure how it changes your whole body,
Yeah, it is.
right? And try to replicate that state even during
Exactly.
your day-to-day, your day-to-day activities.
Yeah, and I think you're right. People can sort of track one thing. We've spoken about wearables. There's so many things I
Mhm.
want to ask Dr. Kristen because I think it's important. But I know HRV is, especially with the Whoop and the Aura, those are the two devices that we have sort of used with our clients, and I think they've been very, very good. But let's move on to the 10 things people can do in 10 minutes because I think it's very important. If you can maybe just unpack those. If you're listening there, it doesn't have to be complicated. I know a lot of you feel overwhelmed and you think there's too much to do and it's just, you're battling to survive out there, especially in a country like ours where it was
Yeah.
assessed as the second most stressful country by Bloomberg in 2015. And we've got some significant challenges here with regards to crime and that. So people's heart rate variability is generally not good and they're under
Yeah.
significant pressure, but it is what it is. And Africa, I love this place and I just really want to help people as much as we can. So give us the 10 things that people can do.
Yes, and I hope you're doing them, by the way. It sounds like you might be. So first, so first I tell people, savor a bowl of blueberries, right? Have some kind of brain healthy fruit. But blueberries are really high in antioxidants, and the evidence shows in the research that eating blueberries or even strawberries can help slow cognitive decline. So it's very easy to do. I also say try to get organic because when I worked in a laboratory setting studying Parkinson's disease, I used to work with some of these pesticides, and pesticides killed neurons immediately. So if you can afford it, get the blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, get some berries, a little half cup, and have those daily. Number two, I tell people you can savor a square of dark chocolate. So we know that dark chocolate, again, is high in antioxidants, just like the blueberries. And why do we love antioxidants? Because they protect the neurons of the brain. So the more antioxidants you can get, the better. And I know everybody wants to have a little treat. So the dark chocolate, not the milk chocolate or the white chocolate, but the dark chocolate, because that's low in sugar, is a great brain healthy snack. You can just get little squares and put them in your refrigerator and, have them whenever you like. Um, write with your non-dominant hand. So I tell people you could actually do anything with your non-dominant hand. So, most people tend to be right-handed. So if you're not, you could, try to write anything. I don't care. You could start trying to write your name. You could actually start using your non-dominant hand to pick up a glass of water, to eat your food. Really, it's just about neuroplasticity, getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that can help what I call stretch your neurons. Oh, you were going to say something? Do you do
No, just
that?
how long do you have to write for? Because I tried and then I'm thinking, I have to ask this question. I have to ask Kristen, do I have to
Yeah.
do it for 5 minutes, 2 minutes? Do I have to write my name 3 times, 4 times? I know Jim Quick talks about brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. I know you guys are friends, but how long
All
do you
of
have to do
that.
that for?
Yeah, no, it's more about, it's not about length of time, it's about consistency over time. So if every day you try to do something with your non-dominant hand, even if you're on your phone and you're typing, you'll start to find, if you do it and I do it, I'll start picking up my glass with my left hand. I just start automatically doing it. So you're training your brain and sort of the cerebellum in the back of your brain to automate doing things with both sides of your body, right? And I think that's a really smart thing to do. It's like, why don't we expand the capabilities of our brain? And you never know when that's going to come in handy, right?
Good.
You break your right arm and you need to use your left, so
Yeah.
you're going to be ready. But it's actually a really smart brain training game for neuroplasticity. Learn a new word a day. So, I'm big on learning anything new. I mean, you and I, as physicians and scientists, I mean, I read every single day. I get journal articles that come to me, and I belong to all these societies. So it's sort of a continual influx. But um, I like people to learn new things. And I think learning a new word each day expands your vocabulary. It will expand the way you communicate with other people. And I think you'll learn to love it. So I tell people, Merriam-Webster dictionary, you can just go on their website. They will send you a new word of the day. And it's fascinating. I'm always learning things that I'd
Mhm.
never heard of before. So
Yeah.
again, easy, right? Everybody can do this. Another one, I say sniff your stress away in the book. So really what that means is utilizing aromatherapy as a way to help calm your mind and lift your mood. Um, so, people underestimate the value of using scent to help improve cognitive function, or again, balance mood. And because I worked in a psychiatric clinic, this is when I really utilized it. And I'd have, in one day you might see 8 patients, so one every hour, and they were struggling with, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder. And so that's even a lot for me to handle. And so what I would do is I would put in the aromatherapy mister, which I hid behind a plant. I might do bergamot, which is the smell of citrus, which is sort of an uplifting, fresh scent. Or you could do lavender for calming, or just a lemon scent. People loved the way the office space felt. And I also had a lot of plants. Like, I see your setting back there. So I would have the plants, I would have lights that mimic the outdoor lights, and I'd have the scent. And people would always leave my office feeling calm and relaxed. So I learned very quickly this is a very smart strategy. And I will tell you, new research came out of UC Irvine very recently, where they were studying participants who were, I believe it was 60 years of age and older, and they wanted to test the efficacy of using scents to improve cognition. And they had people go to sleep and put a mister on for 2 hours, because they knew they would do it when they would sleep, maybe not do it during the
Mm.
day. And there were a combination of scents, but they found that it improved cognitive function in these aging adults. So again, just use that little tip.
Mm.
Go and look at different aromatherapies, pick one that you like. And peppermint for me is really good if you're going to be, if you're going into a meeting or you want to get a quick brain pick me up, put it on your, whatever, on your wrist and smell it. Or you could put it at the back of your neck near your brain stem, and it'll just wake you up.
Mm.
So it helps to oxygenate the brain. So sniff your stress away. Another one, practice gratitude daily. So the gratitude piece is so important. It actually helps strengthen networks in the brain that are improved with positivity and focus and happiness. It helps boost your prefrontal cortex because it makes you feel good when you show gratitude. So what I would have people do is every day in your phone, make a little note to yourself of something, exciting that happened in your day. And you can look at that, and it'll remind yourself, like, over time, of what to be grateful for, and share that with other people. Or share, I'm grateful to have my 2 little dogs here with me today. I'm grateful I could work from home and do this podcast with you. It helps to train the mind to be in a more positive, reflective state. And over time, again, as you know, because you work with people, it's the small habits
Yeah.
that we do daily over time that help change the brain. Next one, I always say, get your exercise in each day. And I put in the book, just go for a brisk walk. I mean, exercise is important. I like everybody to get aerobic activity each day, 30 to 40 minutes if you can. But I have worked with people of all ages. And if I just get you outdoors, power walking, doing your 10,000 steps, right? It boosts blood flow to the heart, it boosts blood flow to the brain. And right, your brain, has miles and miles of capillary networks, and we need to keep moving. And hey, it helps boost your mood as well as boosting blood flow. So you want to get exercising every day. I also tell people, and they don't think about it, and as I'm sitting here, I should probably remember to sit up straight. So maintaining a good posture and sitting up straight. Most CEOs or people who are scientists or people like me, I'm hunched over my computer all day. You want to have alignment with posture. That's going to help um, have a good blood flow to the brain and body. So I'm really big on it's sort of the biomechanics of the way you sit in your chair each day. So remember to sit up straight. I have I hit all of them? Because I'm sort of going by
Yeah.
memory. We've got blueberries, we've got chocolate, new word a day, writing with your non-dominant hand, sniffing your stress away, practicing gratitude, exercising. Oh, 10? 10 fingers.
10 white space. 10 minutes
Oh,
for
the
white
white
space.
space. Yes, 10, like 10 fingers. I feel like the football player. How many fingers do you see after I got knocked out?
Just
You
try to
10
help you there.
minutes of white space. I don't have them all memorized. Yes, practice 10 minutes of white space per day, which is just taking 10 minutes out of your day. You can start in the morning and just sit quietly. It doesn't have to even be in like a meditative space, but just, I always say, no phones, right? Turn everything off. Don't think. And it's just, that's your time to reflect and be introspective and creative. Because that's, I mean, if you look at Einstein, right, imagination, right, is more important than knowledge. Like, I want people to be able to tap into their innate creativity, and you need to build in that 10 minutes of white space each day to be able to do that.
Brilliant. That's incredible. I just want to ask one question about the exercise. The
Yes.
aerobic exercise you're talking about, is that like a zone 2 or a high intensity interval training zone 5? And does it also apply to people that go to the gym and lift weights?
Yes. So good question. Something that I wanted to share with your listeners. And it's just about moving. You don't even have to get into certain zones. Remember how we were talking earlier about hippocampal volume shrinking as we age, and that hippocampus is the area of the brain important in learning and memory. A fascinating study was done in older adults. They were over the age of 58, and what they did was track their exercise habits. They just wanted them to do power walking for 40 minutes, and they were wearing an activity tracker. So you want to try to get your VO2 max at least above a 50, but if you can get it higher, power walking for a year. And they compared that to people who were just doing stretching and toning exercises. And they found those that were power walking were able to increase hippocampal volume by 1 to 2%, whereas those who did just no aerobic exercise, more toning and stretching, their hippocampal volume shrunk by about 1.3%. And because the hippocampus shrinks about 1% per decade, it was just the activity of walking for 40 minutes, keeping your heart rate elevated, was enough to maintain that hippocampal volume. So that's number one. Number two, I think, again, I am so pro just getting people moving. Now, if I love elevated heart rates and HIIT training. I mean, I think all of these things are good, and we can use exercise to actually target different regions of the brain. So, in the clinical setting, if I was working with somebody who has depression, we would recommend people do more of those longer aerobic, like cardiovascular, like running and jogging, or or what do you call it, the rowing machine, just sort of longer cardio exercises. But if you're somebody who struggles with ADD, we want you to do the HIIT training. So HIIT training and boxing, that high intensity workout helps to boost dopamine, whereas the longer workouts are increasing serotonin. If you've got anxiety issues, we'd have people do more meditation and yoga. So a lot more yoga because that's calming to the body. So it's interesting when you ask about what kind of activities, how much, how long, you can actually tailor them to what that particular person needs. But at the end of the day, it's just get out there and walk. And I think I say this for all the 70 and 80-year-olds that I've worked with, where, you know what, just get your little iPhone, track your steps, and let's get your 10,000 steps in. If we can get your heart rate up, great. Now, if you're a pro athlete, that's different. I mean, you and I both work with pro athletes, and that's a whole nother level of training. And I will tell you, all of those pro athletes that we worked with who are still doing that kind of training, I looked at their brains using SPECT imaging, and they still had low blood flow because of damage to the brain. So again, brain health is complex. So it's just get your exercise in. And then sometimes we may need to do other things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, other things to help grow new blood vessels in areas of the brain that might have been damaged. So
Brilliant. And you've
yeah.
spoken, I think those 10 are very practical and people can do them. And you've spoken about them in such a way that makes it simple enough that people can actually help their brains now. And, getting those new words and learning a new language, I think is important to do it on a daily basis. So if you learn a word today, then you've got to repeat it tomorrow. Is that correct? Because, neurons
Yes.
that fire together, wire together.
Wired together, have. Yes, that
Yeah.
is a great point. So learn your new word, teach it to somebody else, remind yourself. They say you should probably repeat it 5 to 7 times throughout the day. So our short-term memory, we want to get it from short-term into long-term. So if you can learn it, use it, right? And even write it. So that's the fascinating thing about learning. I will tell you, and maybe I'm old school because I'm a little older, right? And I grew up, I brought a typewriter to college, right? So it was,
Yeah.
I write everything. You should see, I have those legal pads. So when you learn a new word, learn it, write, teach it to somebody else, write it with your non-dominant hand, like write it in your notebook, write it with your right hand, write it with your left hand, because you'll start to remember it. There are all kinds of sort of unique ways, and I know Jim Quick knows this because he's the memory guy, right? To maintain things in your short-term memory. And that's the whole game about keeping yourself cognitively sharp. It's like you've got to work your brain every day, but working it can be simple, right? You can do your Wordle every day. You can do, hey, I've got a lot of older patients that have all their fun little brain games that they
Yeah.
do, and they're obsessed, and they will do them every day. They'll spend a half an hour doing their Wordle and or their crossword puzzles. Sometimes people actually like the old school, like New York Times pencil and paper, do that, right? And then share it with somebody. Actually, I'm a big fan of puzzles. Like I talk about puzzles as being not just a great brain training game, but for people who are creatives and people who are CEOs, to do a puzzle, to get 1,000-piece puzzle, right? I got one of those cool old school Range Rovers, and I have the puzzle. I'm kind of excited to do it. When you focus those pieces, focus on the puzzle, it's amazing the ideas that you will start to get, because it's almost like you get out of that thinking mind and you get into that creative mind. So, I encourage people to remember to train their brain in fun in different ways.
Brilliant, brilliant. We did
Yeah,
have Dr. Dale Bredesen on the show talk about
I
his
love him.
his
He
cognoscopy.
came, he came to our clinic. He actually had, before he published, I want to say his first book,
Yeah.
he had some of his patients come to our clinic to get their brain scanned. So we've done sort of collaborative work with
Yeah.
him. It's very much in alignment with what we do.
Brilliant. Now he's got this
Yeah.
online assessment called the cognoscopy, and he spoke
Hmm.
and helped me with the MOCA test as well.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of online tests that you can direct the listeners or the viewers on YouTube to go and do as a baseline test? Because I think this is important. And you've spoken about the QEEG. SPECT is not, very common here in South Africa,
Yeah.
and we're not sure if people are going to be able to reading those correctly. But tell us
Right.
about sort of online tests that people can do that you can direct them to.
Yeah, I will tell you when I work with people right now, I'm using a test by a company called Creos. They used to be Cambridge Brain Health Sciences, and I love it. I will have to see if that's available to everyone, but it tests across 12 cognitive domains, takes about 30 to 40 minutes, and they're actually really fun tests to do. So I'll get back to you and see if that's something that people can do daily, but that's what I like. And there's also a company called Web Neuro. I think they're total brain health now. So you might want to go on that website and they will do cognitive assessments testing. It's not just cognitive, it's cognitive, emotional, stress. So they test it across multiple domains that also include psychiatric domains. So those would be the two that I would currently recommend. And as you and I will stay connected, and I'll give you ideas for more, because I
Brilliant.
do feel it's really important for people to just test annually. Just get your cognitive, assessment done. And it's not actually, they're not hard. The ones that are online, I mean, if you go into the clinical setting, they can be a little more challenging, because we're designed to sort of tease out, right? Are you early stage mild cognitive impairment? Do you have dementia? But these other cognitive assessments, what I like is it will tell me the specific domain that you're having challenges with, and then I can use the EEG and neurofeedback to actually work on that pathway to help strengthen it. So it's kind of cool that you can use
Mm,
these assessments and then tailor the treatment for yourself. But even if this is just something you're going to start doing every year, because you know why you'll love it? When you start to see changes with your cognitive health, you're going to be able to get on top of it immediately. And because, I like to think that brain health, there's a lot of sort of reversibility to some of the things we once thought were irreversible. That's why I got into science to begin with.
mm,
I wanted to find ways to cure things we believe are incurable. And
sure.
I say that believe because I've seen some extraordinary things happen in the brain with
Mm,
patients, people who've had strokes and been able to regain their brain function. And so get the cognitive health assessment done. And again, like I said, you could reach out to Dale Bredesen or you could
mm,
reach out to me. And clearly I have access to these. So that's something that I can easily send to somebody and review.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. Now, supplementation, I think, is really
Mhm.
important. I do believe in supplementation, obviously, as best as you can get from your nutrition is always better. But I had Bill Harris on the show talking about the Omega Index from Omega Quant.
Yes.
I want to
Yes,
start
we use
there.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use Omega Quant. We were doing that, God, back in 2009, 2010. We did Omega Quant on, I want to say the first 200 patients that came
Yeah.
into our clinic after getting it. I would say over 90% had low omega-3 index,
Yeah.
and that is a disaster for your brain health. I mean, I know I love that you're pro supplement. I heard on one of your podcasts that you were talking about the importance of vitamin D 20 years ago. And
2006 was my first lecture.
2006, I
Yeah.
thank you for that and I applaud you and honor you for that, because those of us who have really helped to advance um, the use of supplementation and with published research studies and really help to get more of sort of conventional Western medical practitioners engaged in using supplements to help support people's brain health and brain function. And with the vitamin D, I will say one thing that I learned immediately working in a psychiatric clinic: one of the fastest ways to help address depression that does not use medication is omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D. Those two things alone. So if you get your omega-3 fatty acid levels tested by Omega Quant, which you can do, anybody can do. I think it's $100 test, but it's
Mm.
worth it. And then get your vitamin D levels assessed. Again, it's a relatively inexpensive. I want to say it's like $60. Um, in the brain health setting, we want your numbers to be between 60 to 80. So we aim high. You know, most labs would say if you're over 30, you're doing well. But if you're really talking about optimizing your cognitive health, 60 to 80 is where we would like to see you. And then, so imagine if all you need is to optimize your vitamin D levels and your omega-3 fatty acids, and you don't have to take Wellbutrin or any one of your antidepressant medications, that's a win. You know, when we might be able to add a SAMe or 5-HTP. So again, you can use supplements. We use them tailored specifically to what people need. But as you were saying, omega-3 fatty acids, and of course I just jumped right in, so I'm sure you had a question,
No, no
but
problem.
this is omega-3 fatty acids. We use it in psychiatry, so anybody who has any psychiatric disorder needs them. Even in JAMA, they published an article which said people who struggle with clinically diagnosed anxiety, general anxiety disorder, 2 grams of omega-3 fatty acids help reduce symptoms. And to read that in JAMA, I remember I put that in one of my presentations, because now you're really getting clinicians more, you know, being more open to using these, not just to address mental health issues, because again, omega-3 fatty acids help stabilize cell membranes. You know, I'm a neurobiologist, so I look at everything at the cellular level, and they are essential to healthy cell membranes. You want the fluidity of those membranes. And again, people are eating diets heavy in saturated fats and trans fats, and what that does to the cell membranes, right? It makes them harder, and the receptors that sit in those membranes, like the receptors for dopamine and serotonin, do not work as well if you've got this diet high in saturated fat and low in omega-3 fatty acids. So think of having these wonderfully sort of pliable cell membranes, and
Yeah.
it reduces inflammation, right? So omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory and, you know, bring down neuroinflammation in the brain. And I'll tell you, with the pro athletes, and I'm sure you've seen this, one of the eye openers for me is we were working on addressing their brain health, right? So we're seeing these images and they have really low blood flow to multiple areas of the brain. So we put them on a very specific supplement regimen, which included a multivitamin, but it was high dose fish oil. So they would get between 2 to 5 grams. And all of a sudden they would come back in and say they didn't have joint pain anymore. So it was just increasing omega-3s helped with the joints. And then, you know, we started using it more, and it helps with hair, skin, and nails. And so I always tell the ladies, so any of your female listeners, if you want great hair, skin, and nails, make sure you have the omega-3 fatty acids. And if you're concerned about fish, and you know, you don't want to have it from fish, you get the vegan source from algae. So you can get the vegan EPA DHA. But it is essential for your brain, your retina, your heart.
Mm.
Um,
Well,
and
thanks for that. Yeah.
do you have the same position?
Absolutely. And, you know, we've been testing vitamin D for so long. When I first started functional medicine, the range was from 30 to 100 NGs per ml. Then they
Yeah,
started changing the range. And I'm so glad that you said 60, because I generally try and keep my patients at least 60, sometimes even a little bit higher, but 60, between
yeah,
60 and 80. But since these ranges have changed now, the range now, the labs that have here in South Africa are 30 to 50. If you're above 50, you consider that you're on the upper high level,
toxic.
even the toxic level. So unfortunately, and that's based on literature, and they write it there on the labs, on
Right.
2017 osteoporotic literature. And I say
Oh,
to the
wow.
patients, yes, we really are concerned about your bone density, but we're really concerned
Right,
about your brain too. And that
right,
level is not going to be good for your brain. And so unfortunately, what I love about in your book, you say about optimal levels and not normal
right.
levels or in the range. And I think that's crucially important. And maybe you can just unpack that point now, because I know someone's listening out there saying, geez, you know, I went to the doctor, he said, you know, my range was fine on my vitamin D and it's 35. And I'm saying, no, it's more like it should be 65. And so I
It
think it's
really, yeah.
important.
It's important. I will tell you, everybody who comes into our clinic, we do a lab panel. So we know, like, okay, here where your vitamin D levels are, because they're so important in not only just your bone health, but also your brain health. I mean, low levels of vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids are seen in people who have Alzheimer's and dementia. So because we are all about optimization in treating people's brain health, you need to have those levels at least 60. And to get to 60, what we found is people might need to have 5,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D per day. I take 5,000 IUs per day, but I test, I test every year. Yeah, I test every year, and usually my number is, somewhere between 60 and 70. And I tell people, if you're trying to figure it out right away, test every 3 months. It's an inexpensive test. And to get that in the right range, if you were to do three things, and I think I mentioned this in the book, if you were to only take three supplements, I tell people, anybody over the age of 40, a foundational multivitamin, because as we age, our brain's starting to shrink, and you want to make sure you're taking in the right amount of nutrients to create neurotransmitters. And I know you're a big fan of understanding, right, the neurotransmitter level. So just take a foundational multivitamin. Of course, we've got brain directed ones, but number two, get your omega-3 fatty acid levels tested and optimized. And number three, get your vitamin D levels tested and optimized. And so most people are going to need 1 to 2 grams of high quality fish oil, and most people are going to need 5,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D. And the toxic levels are not until you get 80 to 100. And the only time I've seen people toxic is if they're a cancer patient and they get the 100,000 IU pill from their doctor. Sometimes the levels can get really high really quick, but taking 5,000 to 10,000 IUs, you really have to take it for some time to really move the needle on the vitamin D level. So I am going to echo your sentiments, Dr. Steve, that 30 is unacceptable for brain health.
Yeah,
Unacceptable.
fantastic. And the Omega Index, where do you want to see it? I mean, I've never had a single patient or client, and we've done lots of clients and patients over many, many years, whose Omega Index has been correct, over 5%. I don't know where you would like to see it.
We
So
like 7 to 8%.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to, when we did that testing in our clinic, so we do all kinds of things to say, hey, is this working? What is our patient base? Where are they struggling? And the omega-3 index, I want to say well over 90% of people had omega-3 index too low. I did not, my mentor did not, but we were already taking omega-3 fatty acid supplement. So the people who take the supplement should be able to get that number up to 8% or higher. So again, we go for optimize, right? I'm trying to sort of protect the health of your brain. I want you to have a long health span and lifespan, and I don't want you to struggle with a degenerative disease starting at age 65. That's why I start with people young. If you're listening to this and you're 25, you are so far ahead of the game if you start doing this. But you know what? If you're 65 or 70 and listening, we can still right the ship. And it's the nutrients. You read my book. When I was younger, I didn't believe in supplements. I was probably like most people, right? They're expensive urine, right? You take the supplements, this doesn't do anything. Once you get into psychiatry and neurology and you realize how extraordinary it can be just to make these small changes with nutritional supplements. I mean, as people get older, everybody gets the glucosamine plus chondroitin, right, for their needs. So they're really happy to take that. They're like, yeah, I'll take that, but I won't do omega-3s or vitamin D or B complex. I mean, we also know vitamin B levels decrease, right? As people get older, their low levels get low with Alzheimer's. So what do we need to change? We need to just make sure you're getting enough B vitamins in your diet. And let's make sure you get enough C for your antioxidants. And I heard you on a podcast. Now, this is something I learned from you, Mr. Dr. Steve. I have patients that wear the sleep trackers, and some of them get very obsessed with their REM sleep. I've got one patient who's got dementia, and he's got like spreadsheets on his sleep and his non-REM and his REM, and he's an engineer, which is why we got all the spreadsheets. but he is baffled why he's only getting sometimes a half an hour of REM sleep, and he's always trying to biohack that. And I keep trying to tell him those sleep trackers are not necessarily accurate. We've had him go get the sleep test done, but then and his sleep test is always fine. And then he goes back to the tracker and it says his REM is low. But I heard you say that I don't know if you did an IV vitamin C, and every time you do the IV vitamin C, your REM went up to at least an hour.
Yeah.
Have you like tracked this or done this with clients that you work with or your patients? Because I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, I have. And I think just in combination with just my lifestyle and my genetics being more inflammatory based, that when I do high dose vitamin C, and it's 20 grams, my REM sleep will go up to about 2 hours. And so it is
Did you do an IV or did you just
IV.
do? Okay, you did. Okay.
IV 20 grams. Yeah, look, I've tried to do it orally, but at about 8 grams of, vitamin C, then I start getting loose stools. And so it gets a bit ugly.
Could you space that and just do literally 1 gram every hour, 1 gram every 2 hours? So you could space it throughout the day?
I did try it. I
Yeah,
spaced it with 1500, but it's still at the end of it just
too
accumulated. The
much.
morning was fine. And then by the, 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, it started getting me a bit of gastric distress. And actually we
Yeah,
saw in COVID, I had a lot of clients and patients who took way too much vitamin C, and they started getting
interesting.
reflux, and they started getting issues with their, with their stomach. And obviously the
Yeah,
liposomal form is the best, but not everybody's
right,
taking it. So then they're taking vitamin C, and it's not often buffered, and they're starting to get some
right,
gastric distress. So one has to be careful with vitamin C. I'm a big fan, but I'm a lot more concerned about your probiotics, your vitamin D. I mean, my top supplement is
right.
omegas, because every single person I tested is low. I can't get them to that level unless they supplement. It doesn't matter how much fish they
That's
have.
that is accurate. You are absolutely right. We recommend 1 to 2 servings of fish per week, but not everybody does it, and it's just easier to take the
Mm,
supplementation. So I like it. It's funny, because I'm a scientist, I test everything. I just love it, and I'm fortunate because I also have brain imaging, so I can do an
mm,
EEG of your brain and put you on a particular supplement and see if it's making measurable
mm,
changes. And boy, I will tell you that objective data keeps people on supplements forever, right? It's
exactly.
amazing what a visual or having the data points. But for you, I love that you do the Omega Quant. And what's nice is you could just say, hey, why don't we start you on 1 to 2 grams of omega-3s for 3 months? So what I found, it's a 3-month period of time that people need to take something before we start to see sort of the new homeostasis in
Yeah.
your brain and body. And so if somebody wants to say, hey, I want to hit the ground running, you just start with that. Most people can take it unless they're on blood thinners or have, and I'm sensitive to that because clearly when you work with older populations, you
Mm,
have to be very mindful of omega-3s and
yeah.
curcumins and some of those things that's in the blood. But and then do your omega quant testing after 3 months and see if you can't get them to a nice level.
Yeah.
And if it's not at 7% or higher, you can boost it up. I mean, we went as high as 5 grams again
Yeah.
with our pro athletes, recovering and restoring their brain function. And hey, we want to give them all the help that we can.
Yeah, and it's important. I had a long conversation with Bill Harris, who's been doing this for 40 years, started Omega Quant. And, I take
Yes, he's amazing.
yeah, he's amazing. And I
Yeah.
take 4 grams of EPA, DHA, and my Omega
Hmm.
index was 4%. And he cannot understand, you
That does
know,
not make any sense. You
yeah.
take 4 grams. Are you still at 4%?
We're looking at retesting again and changing the
Yeah.
omegas, because I've tested many times, 3 times, and it just does not go up. In
What?
fact, yeah. So we're not sure if it's because of my exercise. I exercise every day. I've run over 40,000 kilometers in the last 28 years. I've run 11
I
comrades,
love
which is a
that.
56-mile race. So I don't know if it's the exercise. We don't know if it's the fasting. We're not sure. But this is
I
why I
would
love the title
try.
of your book, because biohack, which means
Yeah,
for SteveStavs, you're going to look at it and see what happens. For someone else, 2 grams could be enough. For someone else, 1 gram could be enough. But you need to
right.
test. You can't guess.
You cannot guess. And for you, what I would do is change up your omega 3. So did you try different brands?
We did, and it didn't go up, but we're just trying to work out now what the problem is, because I only keep quality brands at the office. So we're trying to work out why this omega index is not going up.
It is that is fascinating. See, this is the
Mm,
kind of stuff I love. Like, I'm
yeah,
all about complex problem solving,
yeah,
but you know, it is interesting. You are like a pro athlete. You train like a pro athlete. You're metabolizing things quickly. Maybe you need more. It's not, I'm trying to think how high. I mean, we've had people go up to 7 grams. So
yeah,
you could potentially boost it. Again, you're a doctor, so understand. And
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you could have a GI, it could impact
Issue,
your
yeah,
GI system.
yeah,
But to your point, when I used to do IV vitamin C's, if I'm sick, I go in and get one. You are even right with the IV vitamin C, that can make you feel a little
yeah.
nauseous. So,
It,
and I'm really mindful of that when I work with patients, because I want them to always have a positive experience. So if you take a supplement, this is for anybody, and immediately you get a weird effect, stop. Don't take it anymore. Call Dr. Steve, call me and we'll change it, because there's some fish oils that give you the fish oil burps. I tried one at a conference that I got from I mean, they were affiliated with a very high-end university, and I got it for free. I think it was at
mm,
like A4M or one of the big
mm,
conferences. And I went back to my room and I took it, and it made me nauseous, and I had the
mm,
burps, and I'd never had that before. And because we
mm,
didn't have that with our, patients in our clinic. So I just want to give the disclaimer: if you try something and have a weird effect,
mm.
let's change the brand, or don't try to do it again and
Yeah.
see if it's better. Usually there could be an ingredient or something in there that
Brilliant.
is
Let's
causing
move
it.
on to
Yeah.
some of the specific other sort of nootropics, this big deal out there. What do you
Hmm.
think of like the other ones you've written in the books, like ginkgo and huperzine? What do you think
Yes.
people like, if they really want to focus and they want their mental performance or their cognitive performance, what nootropics they should take, or what sort of specific supplements they should take?
Yeah, in the book, what I did was create 3 tiers of supplement protocols for people. And I did this very mindfully, knowing the book was going out to the general public. I mean, one of the other hats I wore at the Amen Clinics is I was the director of nutrition and nutraceuticals. So I was there using brain imaging to test the efficacy of these supplements, and also working with patients, psychiatric patients, or people with neurological issues, to help manage the supplement medication, piece. But in the book, so the first tier I did, which is again some of the basics that I think anybody can take. You can go tell your physician, but it's the basic, multivitamin. I like liquid trace minerals, which I had put in there because I thank you for the thumbs up. I feel like trace minerals are so important for your brain health, and most people aren't doing green juices every day or eating a Mediterranean diet. So I just wanted to make sure you have enough minerals to help support your brain health. Probiotics, which you had talked about, curcumin, which I think is an extraordinary anti-inflammatory. And by the way, I've seen one of my colleagues does research in the brain looking at curcumin and its ability to bind beta amyloid plaques in the eye, and using that as an early detector of Alzheimer's disease. So yeah, the fact that we know curcumin is binding to these toxic beta amyloid plaques, and can help to clear them from the body. I'm like, everybody, if you can handle it, doing a curcumin, I think, is really important, and vitamin D and omega-3. So that was sort of tier 1. I think everybody can take that. Again, if you're on blood thinners, talk to your doctor about omega-3 levels or curcumin. The next level up, I called it sort of the all stars. Like, okay, if you want to take care of your brain health, these are the other nutrients I think are important, like the B vitamins. I put a B complex, spirulina, magnesium, coenzyme Q10, which is really important to support your mitochondrial health and your heart health. So those are some of the things that I think are really essential. So now, if you want to take it to the next level and you're sort of a brain health warrior, I created tier 3, which I call the injured reserve. It's what we use for brain rehabilitation in our clinic, but at lower doses, you could do it to support optimal brain health. And this is where we're getting into the nootropic part. So it's like, what are the supplements that can really help support healthy brain function? And these were the supplements we use with our published brain imaging studies, showing if you took these supplements that are in that sort of tier 3 injured reserve, they will improve perfusion to your brain, blood flow to your brain, and those effects are long lasting. And that's extraordinary. So those were N-acetylcysteine, which is a potent antioxidant. So we love NAC, alpha lipoic acid. So alpha lipoic acid is a great antioxidant, balances blood sugar. Acetyl L-carnitine. So if we want to help boost acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that improves your memory, we want to have acetyl L-carnitine. Huperzine A. So this is, we were actually studying that alone, just seeing if it improves memory. So huperzine A helps to improve acetylcholine levels. So if you've got huperzine A plus acetyl L-carnitine, it's a nice way to boost memory. We use vinpocetine. Again, it's an extract from a plant, a periwinkle plant, that helps dilate blood vessels and improve blood flow. And ginkgo biloba, which is, again, that's been around for centuries. And that also helps to boost blood flow. So in our published research studies, I believe it was the ginkgo biloba and the vinpocetine that really helped to improve the perfusion that we saw with the SPECT imaging. But you need it, I think, in combination with some of these other supplements that boost acetylcholine to help support memory. And I won't go into the detail. I mean, the published papers I can always give you, or I talk a little bit about it in the book, but these combinations helped in an injured population of athletes, brain injured population of athletes, improve their cognitive function, support their mental health, improve their sleep, and keep the blood flow to the brain. And again, those were not only shown after a 6-month period of time on those supplements, but they lasted over the course of years. So our goal in the clinical setting is, how can we keep blood flow to your brain being as strong as possible, right? How can we help keep your brain well perfused for a lifetime? And I think, and getting back to even why I wrote the book, having seen tens of thousands of scans, so we have a database that has over 200,000 brain images. I've seen so many thousands of brain scans, and most people have low perfusion somewhere and they don't know it. They might have been exposed to toxic mold, right? They might have had a traumatic brain injury. They might be struggling with a chronic inflammatory disorder like Lyme's disease. You never know how your brain is going to react to things. So, the supplement protocol in the book was really about, how do I help people empower them to take care of their brain health? I know everybody can't get a scan. I know these things are expensive. And so truth be told, the kind of scans we do in our clinic also expose you to, it's a nuclear imaging study.
Yeah.
So there's a tracer, a radioactive tracer, and we have to be mindful of that, which is why I love the electrical imaging of the brain, because that's healthy. Everybody can do it. But I just wanted to empower people. These were the things that we use in the clinical setting. You can talk to your doctor about them if you have questions, but they were the most effective at helping support perfusion to the brain and long-term cognitive health. And trust me, people are still taking these. You can actually buy what I put in the tier 3 is like a supplement pack called Brain Power Max. So
yeah, brilliant. And we'll put those links in the show notes. And I think it's really profound that you got 3 tiers: the most important, the second most important, and then if you've got the finances, the 3rd tier. Because I think if you don't have the basics, if you've got EPA and DHA, you're going to have a real problem. So thank you for that. I know we're coming to the end of the show. One quick last question, maybe just you can summarize your 3 most important brain games that people can just help their brain, because I know there's brain training, which is very, very important. There's a lot we didn't get to. I cannot recommend this book more, Biohack Your Brain. It is just absolutely amazing. Everybody needs it, because everybody has a brain, and this is an organ, and it's like a muscle, and it needs training. It needs to be worked. and you need a grid from the basic foundation to the best that you can be. So tell us about your 3 most important brain games.
Yeah, and to your point, everybody goes to the gym. Look at you. You are a marathon runner and you're running. What is this big
The
race again?
56-mile race, it's called Comrades. It's like the
The
most like,
comrade race.
yeah.
Yes. I mean, I tried to run the Boston Marathon, by the way, and got a stress fracture in my tibia. I'm a big fan of running.
Okay.
I love how people are so, they take such great care of their body. You've got all of these athletes and people out there, but people forget about the brain. They tend to forget about it until they have a mental health disorder or a neurological disorder. And
Mm,
so again, I wrote the book to really sort of be a cheerleader,
mm,
teach people how to be a cheerleader for your brain, work your brain like a
mm,
muscle. So my favorite brain training games, I mean, I talked about it earlier. Number one, I love puzzles. I think puzzles are an amazing way to keep your mind sharp. I'm talking just the jigsaw puzzles.
mm.
Number two, I love the brain training games that you could do, like Brain HQ, which I have as an app on my phone. I will tell you, in the clinical setting, if we had you do um, a cognitive assessment, it would tell us exactly which brain training games you needed to support your brain. And Brain HQ does something similar. They have different tiers that you can play, and they're really fun. So I love Brain HQ. And number three, I think reading, I call reading a brain training game, but if I can empower people to start reading every day, read a book a day or read a book a week, like that is going to train your brain more than you ever know. It is going to make you smarter. You're actually going to learn how to communicate through reading how other people formulate their sentences. Like people don't even realize what they're getting through reading, great works of history. Read whatever you want, but please just start reading. So those are my top three.
Brilliant. Well, where can people connect with you, find you, learn more about your work, and buy the book?
Yes, thank you. So I have a website. It's drwilleumier.com, and I'm sure you will put it in the show notes because nobody knows how to spell my name. And then you are welcome to contact me through my website. I will answer any question that you have, or if you want to take a brain test, I can send you one. My book you can get through the website or through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. It's wherever books are sold. And I'm
Brilliant.
so grateful, Dr. Steve, I'm so grateful for your thoughtful questions, for your amazing work that you're doing in the field. I really champion physicians who are going out there and really empowering the greatest number of people they can to take care of their health. And I know you are brain and body health, and it all
Mm.
goes together. So I thank you for the great work that you're doing in the world and for the really amazing discussion that we had
Yeah,
today.
brilliant. And I just want to declare favor and blessing over you, that you would just rise up with courage, and your calling has been absolutely amazing. And look forward to many
Oh,
more books from you, many more podcasts. We want to hear your voice. It's a voice of gratitude. It's a voice of science and experience. And, it's just, you are so collaborative. So thank you so much. Look after yourself. And hopefully you've got a home in Africa now. Come to Johannesburg. We can send you.
can I?
Yeah, anytime. We've got a
I
beautiful
would
home that we've
love
been blessed
it.
with, and we can send you on safari down to Cape Town. The Victoria Falls in Zim and Botswana is absolutely amazing. So you could do a 3-week, 4-week process easily. We'll come stay with us, and we'll send you to the places that are lovely. So
Oh
anytime,
God, I
you're more than
love
welcome to.
you.
Yeah,
I,
more than
you know,
welcome.
I, I will tell you, I've been to Tanzania,
Mm,
Ghana, and Ethiopia. So I've been fortunate to do some safari, but I've never been to South Africa.
yeah,
I want to come. I'm going to take you up on that
yeah.
offer,
Take me
young
up.
man.
Take me up.
I'm telling you,
Okay.
my father was a Pan American pilot, so I've been around the world, but I have
Okay.
not been to your home. So
Cool.
thank
Yeah.
you for that. And if
Pleasure.
you're in the Los Angeles area, you had
Okay.
better look me up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Oh, such a pleasure.